Hi, I'm Frank Kromkowski, a member of Our Revolution Helena, and I want to welcome you to our new TV program here on Helena Civic TV. Our Revolution Helena is a group of people inspired by Senator Bernie Sanders, who was our candidate in the 2016 primary elections. We were founded really as Helena for Bernie Sanders, and then we morphed into Our Revolution Helena when Bernie Sanders founded a new group called Our Revolution. That's a national group that we're part of. And this is our second program, and all our programs are really designed to somehow feed off of our own goals for what we're trying to do as Our Revolution Helena. We're an independent political progressive action group, and one of our main goals, as in our mission statement, is to energize American democracy by activating supporters and engaging more people in the political process. And related to that today, our two friends and partners in the process of voter registration here in Helena and in Lewis and Clark County and Jefferson County as well. And so today, Our Revolution is really honored to have Claire Kearns and Rebecca Johnson to talk about voter registration in the Helena area. And I'd like both of them to introduce ourselves to our viewers.
Well, thank you, Frank, for letting us be here today to talk about voter registration. I'm Rebecca Johnson.
And I'm Claire Kearns.
Well, Claire and I met as part of the Rise Together Montana group, which organized this January's Women's March and Rally at the Capitol. And we got talking, and we both decided that there wasn't enough being done to register voters in the area. And we thought we would find out how we could help in registering voters. So we started researching, and we learned about the great work that was being done by the Montana Women Vote. So we both became volunteers with the Montana Women Vote, and this is a great organization. It's a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. Its main mission is to increase participation for women in all aspects of democracy. That includes voter registration and voting. Claire and I became volunteers once we realized that there was no one coordinating and organizing a voter registration drive in the area. We became volunteers, Montana Women Vote, and we've ever since, so it's been the last 2 months that we've really kicked this off. So to date, we have 22 trained volunteers, which is incredible, and our whole focus is to make voter registration more accessible to all eligible voters in the Helena area. That means we go out to places that people congregate to register people and make it accessible. We register everyone, men, women, regardless of political affiliation, their status in the community. We register everyone that's eligible to vote. And sometimes it's really hard for people to register and then also to get out and vote. Like people have problems with transportation or access to a computer, and they work all the time. That's actually what we've found while we've been out and about for the last 2 months. We have found that it's usually employees that are at work that we're registering because they don't have any other time. And that's one of the things we want to plug today is encouraging employers to contact us and let us know if we can come and help register their employees. So we want to help remove the barriers in registering to vote. We have been going out in the community more and more. We have our clipboards and our forms, and we have these great buttons here that say, I can help you register to vote. And we've been out at many places. We've been at Walmart, Vans, Staggering Ox, Lewis and Clark Public Library, just to name a few. This summer we plan to do a lot more outdoor activities as the weather gets nice. So we're looking at farmers markets, the art walk, and then also Alive at 5.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I will see you at the first Alive at 5 on May 22nd. I just happened to look up that date.
Yeah.
So that sounds like an interesting and challenging project to register people to vote. How many people are registered to vote, Claire?
In the 2017 census, the number of people in Montana who are 18 and older, there's over 821,000 people. And of those, 675,000, a little more than that, are actually registered to vote, which means that there's still over 146,000 Montanans not registered to vote yet. But that number does include people who might not be eligible, like if somebody's incarcerated or if they've been adjudicated by a court saying that they are of unsound mind, or if they are not yet a citizen, they're not eligible. So that number includes some of those folks. In Lewis and Clark County specifically, the total population is over 67,000. The people of voting age, 18 and older, is almost 53,000. So that's over 78% of the population in Lewis and Clark County that are eligible to vote. But the actual numbers that's registered is only a little over 45,000. So that's about 7,000, almost 8,000 people in Lewis and Clark County alone that aren't registered to vote. And our goal is to try to hit every single one of them. That might be lofty, but that's our goal.
That's very interesting and a real challenge, because sometimes, and I have registered people to vote in the past myself, and I found out that various people thought they couldn't vote because they had been in prison. And Montana is one of the good states that allows people to vote as soon as they're out of prison. A lot of prisoners, ex-prisoners, didn't know that.
Right.
But how many Montanans actually vote? Maybe you've got a lot of people you want to register, but of those who are registered to vote, how many actually do vote?
Frank, well, we found when we start looking at the statistics, there's a lot of good information over on the Montana Secretary of State, and then also the U.S. Census. So in the general election of 2016, voter turnout in Montana was 74.4%. And this is compared to a national voter turnout rate of 58%. So Montanans in 2016 did much better at getting to the polls and voting. And that could be, we have the mail-in ballot, which we'll talk about later, but that makes it very convenient for people to vote here in our state. But for the special election in 2017, the voter turnout rate was only 54.7%. So we definitely have to do better in the special elections and getting more voters to the polls and voting. At one time, though, this is interesting when you start looking at the information, Montana had a voter turnout rate for the general elections as high as 84 to 86%. This was in the 1950s and 60s. So we can get much better, and we should get much better at voter turnout, because elections should represent all of the people in the community. And we're hearing, when we're going out registering people, that some people feel so disenfranchised and just disillusioned, they don't believe their vote counts, and they won't even register to vote. And this is really sad for us to hear, because we think that everyone's vote matters, and that people that are impacted the most by elected officials' decisions are usually the ones that don't vote.
Well, at our first Our Revolution Helena TV program, we had as one of the persons being interviewed a young woman from the Helena Youth Against Gun Violence. And I gather from talking with some of the younger people in town that they're very interested in politics, maybe more than ever. Are millennial voters getting involved more or less, or what's your
They are
understanding?
getting involved more. And millennial voters, for people that aren't familiar, that's the term for voters who are between the age of 18 and 34. And in the 2016 election, only half of those voted. And considering that they make up nationwide 94 million people, that's a big chunk of people that didn't vote. And in Montana, we don't have statistics to show exactly how the millennials are voting. Montana doesn't track that. But in Virginia, they found that millennials every 4 years are increasingly voting. Like in 2009, only 17% of millennials voted. 2013, 26% voted. 2017, 34% voted. So they're increasing. And this was before the event in Florida, so the millennials seem to be much more active now, and I think inclined to vote.
Well, I noticed in looking at the Montana Women Vote website and Facebook page that part of their origin was looking at trying to empower low-income women to vote. What can you tell me about low-income women and voting?
Yeah, that's a good one, and that's one of the main missions for Montana Women Vote, is getting this group of the population involved in the democratic process. And voting registration and voting is key to that. So they generally have a low voter turnout rate, approximately 35% in the past, so it has been a big problem. And realizing this, Montana Women Vote over the years has worked with the low-income women voters and increased the turnout rate by voter registration, educating the importance of the issues to this group, as well as mobilizing efforts, getting low-income women voters to the polls. So the turnout rate over the years has risen to 77%. It's been a very effective campaign. So some of the barriers that this group encounters when they try to vote is getting a ride to the polls, working two jobs, having no time, not realizing the registration process and getting registered, child care issues. They can't get to the polls due to child care issues. They frequently move, so they're not getting, if they chose a mail-in ballot, it's not getting to them. And the lack of knowledge of issues that impact them and how important their vote is in making a difference for their lives.
That is really interesting, and it is of real concern to Our Revolution Helena, because we're inspired by Bernie Sanders, who all of his career had been looking out for the people at the bottom of the economic ladder to try to raise those people up. And glad that you're involved in that project to outreach to low-income women and to everyone. But as you said before, a lot of people are turned off or maybe in despair about political parties and the political process. How would you answer the question about why voting matters?
We do hear that question a lot from people, or they say that they don't want to vote because they don't think that it makes any difference. But I would really like to emphasize that every vote counts. It's a person's opportunity to decide if a candidate who's running for office actually has the same values as they do or not. If they have the same values, they can vote for that candidate. If the candidate doesn't have the same values, they can vote that person out of office. And recent examples that show that every vote counts, Wilmot Collins, who's now the mayor in Helena, won by only 300 votes. That's really a kind of slim margin. In Virginia, the candidate that won, I think it was, for the legislature in Virginia, won by 1 vote. And that's like a real clear example that every single vote counts. And then even with President Trump in 2016, with electoral votes, he won by only a little over 77,000 votes, which is only about 1/100% of all the people that voted. There were 136 people that voted in that election. So that's less than 1/100% that he won to get elected. And 99% of, 99 million voters across the country did not vote. If they did vote, it could have had a totally different outcome with that election. So I'd like to emphasize that every single vote counts.
Yeah, and I would like to add on to that. In Montana, the elections are not just about electing candidates or officials. It's also about voting initiatives on the ballots. So we have some possible initiatives on the upcoming election that people vote on and can make a difference if these initiatives pass. Some of the possible initiatives, one is requiring mining companies to submit plans to clean up their pollution. Otherwise, it's up to us, the taxpayers, to pick up the expense of treatment of contaminated mine water. Another one that's possibly coming up is requiring a person using a locker room that is designated for a locker room or a protected facility in a public school or government building to use the facility that is designated for the person's sex on their birth certificate. Some referendums coming up. Another possible one is prohibition of ballot collection by certain individuals. And then also this, you probably have heard of this one, the 6 mil levy for support of the Montana university system. If this one doesn't get passed by the voters, it means higher tuition for students at these universities. And then past issues, and people have to realize how important this can impact their lives on these initiatives. The state earned income tax credit was passed by an initiative by the voters to help low-income families. And then another one was legislature put restrictions placed on medical marijuana, and this was overturned by the voters. So it's very important that people realize, you know, that these initiatives can have a major impact on their lives and that they should get out and vote.
You know, one of the things that one of our representatives, Mafi Funk, mentioned the other night when she was dialoguing with us at our Revolution Helena meeting is that in Montana, unlike in other states, in a lot of other states, the voters can really contact their legislators and be face-to-face with them and get to know them rather than being shunted off. And people would say that they would like their representatives to respond more accurately and responsively than some of our legislators do. But we have a chance in Montana to change things if we organize in the electoral process. Well, we only have about a minute and a half left, so I want to just ask a couple additional questions. What are the important voting dates people should know? And how can people get involved in your project to help register voters so that we can get more voters empowered to make some changes that might be needed?
I can address the dates.
Okay.
June 6th, there's a primary that's coming up, and then the general election is November 5th. And in Montana, we have an opportunity to elect a senator and a representative. So it's important for people to come out and vote this year, even though it's not a presidential election. It's an important election. And there's also going to be some local and state elections too coming up this year. So I'd like people to remember June 6th and November 5th.
And I can touch on a couple of things about people registering to vote. It's a very simple process. It only takes 1 to 2 minutes. It requires no ID at the time. And that's when people can choose a mail-in ballot, which is very popular with Montanans. And then they can get involved as a volunteer. Claire and I meet at the Staggering Ox at 6:30 every Monday night. And we just ask that if you're interested in volunteering, send an email to risetogethermontana@gmail.com and let us know your contact information, and we'll contact you and let you know about the training. Usually takes about 30 minutes. Each volunteer is given a clipboard, forms, packet information, and a great big beautiful I can help you register to vote button. We're out a lot on public places. We are finding more opportunity, get in front of people and make this a process that's accessible to everyone, because everyone counts and that they should be represented by their officials. And the work for volunteering is very rewarding. I find that you're empowering people to have the right to vote and get registered and helping them break down those barriers. And I've met homeless people who live in their car and didn't know they had the right to vote. And it's just a very warm sense that you're accomplishing something and that we are providing a public service that everyone knows that's eligible has the right to vote. And we want to break down those barriers and ensure that we help those people get their vote counted.
Do we have time for me to say who's eligible and who's not eligible to
Yes,
register?
go ahead.
Okay, in Montana, we're much more progressive than a lot of states. Everybody is eligible as long as they're a citizen of Montana for at least 30 days, 18 years, or if they're 17 years old, as long as they're going to be 18 by the next election, they can register to vote. They have to be a U.S. citizen. In Montana, we mentioned this earlier, that a person, if they have a felony on their record, they can still register to vote and vote unless they're incarcerated. But if they've been released from prisoner jail and they're in pre-release, they're eligible to register and to vote. The only people who aren't eligible are people who are currently incarcerated or people who have been adjudicated by the court to be of unsound mind. But everybody else in Montana is As long as they're of age, they're eligible to vote. And we've been finding a lot of people don't realize if they have a felony on their record, they don't realize that they're eligible to vote. So that's been, to me, real encouraging to pass on that information to people and feel, let them feel they're empowered and they can make a difference.
Yeah, and I'd like to add that we have found that people don't realize that they can re-register, because some people, their residency address changes. They should fill out another voter registration application with their new address. And people want to get the mail-in ballot, which is very popular in Montana. They should re-register. And then also, if you haven't voted in the last 2 elections, you are now listed as an inactive voter. You should re-register and get on the record as being an active voter, and making sure the ballot comes to the right address and the right person.
Well, thank you very much. Given the trends in the United States, where people seem to be going in opposite directions in some places, it's good to see that the 2 of you and Montana Women Vote are taking the initiative to reach out to your brothers and sisters, to help them to get registered to vote, and then to help make democracy a real thing in the United States.
Yeah.
I want to thank everyone for listening today to our Revolution Helena's TV program. We are very interested in your ideas for what you'd like to see us do with our program, so send us an email or a Facebook message to the address that was given on the screen earlier. It's easy too. It's ourrevolutionhelena@gmail.com. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Frank,
Thank you.
for having
Thank you.
us.
Thank you.